romantic comedy romantic comedies this last week. And I'm really excited to chat with these authors and for you guys to be here and get to know them. My husband has been curious all week about what I've been reading in the evenings, as I sit over on the couch and I giggle and I blush and it's been pretty great. Um, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. I'd love for you to introduce yourselves, tell us about your books and about who you are to get started. Anybody want to go first?
I'll go first.
Yay. Okay.
Hi, I'm Adele Buck. I am the author, as of yesterday, of two Afterglow books. The first one is Fake Flame, which came out in the spring. Firefighter, what they call reverse age gap. An age gap is an age gap. Come on, people. And Professor Romance, that is also, of course, a fake dating book. And then as of yesterday, I have the Antisocial Season, which is a holiday romance that I am super excited about. It's my first holiday romance, and it stars a former firefighter, female, and a male librarian. And she is learning the ropes of social media from him. So that's me.
It's pretty great. I'm in the middle of that one right now.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, awesome. I'll go next. I'm Karen Booth. I write sexy contemporary romance. I never have a tagline. I'm not good with taglines. But my first book for Afterglow was Swap and Smell the Roses, which came out in May. It is a grumpy sunshine, fish out of water book about a woman who lives in Brooklyn who ends up in the Connecticut countryside for the summer and does not like all the quiet. Has to learn how to slow down and figure out her life, basically. And then I have another book coming out for Afterglow next May called Not So Fast, which is a Formula One enemies to lovers romance. And yeah, that's me. That's me.
Thank you.
I will round this out by introducing myself. Hi, everyone. I'm MC Vaughan, and I am a Baltimore-based author. I write contemporary rom-coms, and my first Afterglow released in July of this year. It's called Romancing the Stone, and it's a bit of a love letter to Romancing the Stone, but gender flipped, where a tour guide meets a gentleman who is looking for his ex-fiance who broke up with him unceremoniously, and they may find her, but they may find love on the way. That, like I said, it came out in July of this year. It was my opportunity to travel in my mind when travel was not really happening. And my next Afterglow book is releasing in June of next year. And that is called Destination Weddings and Other Disasters. And it features the younger sister of the heroine from Romancing Miss Stone. I think you can gather what it's about from the title.
Yeah, my third, they haven't released it out to the wild, but I can say that my third book with Afterglow is called This Road Trip Has Only One Bed.
Awesome title.
Well, honestly, when they asked me for titles, I was like, it could be This Road Trip Has Only One Bed on the way to the wedding with your brother's ex best friend, because it's Tropapalooza, but yeah.
Awesome.
You made sure that we knew right up front what we were getting into.
Well, I was actually calling it Stunner because in the first chapter, she falls and hits her head and gets a concussion, and he's a paramedic and ends up scooping her off the pavement. But apparently they didn't go with that. So
we've had the opportunity previous to this to chat a little bit, and you mentioned that you three have had the opportunity to get to know each other a little bit at Harlequin's 75th anniversary celebration. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
It was pretty epic. It was in Toronto. How long were we there? 3 nights, I guess.
Yeah.
We got to go to the Harlequin offices in Toronto, which are on the 41st floor, 44th floors, above 40, very high up.
high enough, and with the floor to ceiling windows that made me go,
Yeah,
I'm very
yeah.
afraid of heights, so I did not get too close to those
I'm-
windows because
I'm the
looking
same.
down is no, yeah.
It was very pretty from afar, but I did
Yes.
not step up to the windows.
Yeah, you know you're very high up
yeah.
and they have their own special elevator.
Yes,
It's like
yes.
just a rocket ship.
Yeah. And there were over 140 authors there.
Wow.
It was amazing. Just all kinds of, it was actually kind of cool because they gave us a behind the scenes, like more in-depth look at everything that happens, like all the eyes that are on our books from start to finish. And whether it's art or editorial or typesetting, marketing, of course. Yeah, it was great. But then the best part was just having social time and dinners out and cocktails and all of that and getting to see everybody. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much for those of us who miss the social aspects of Romance Writers of America annual general conference. It kind of was like a little bit of that, because it's you're just getting to hang out with other writers and talk about the business, about your books, about everything. It's just it's very comforting because writing, as a lot of people know, is a very isolating activity because you're mostly doing it on your own, and then you send it off into, to your editor, and then you wait, and then all of a sudden you get a file in your inbox that you need to deal with, and there is obviously collaboration, but at the end of the day, it's your book. And it's a lot of decision making about the suggestions slash commentary on what you have given them.
And
So
just to plus one everything that's been said, it it's really inspiring to be in the same rooms as people who are going through the same things that you are. Maybe not exactly at that moment, but you don't have to explain what it means when you just got your developmental edits, or a manuscript went on NetGalley, but you're not sure it's the right version. Like, people understand what that terror is without you having to explain all of the details to them. So it's nice just to have that sort of, well, I guess sorority really is how I'd describe it.
yeah.
Imagine that's really special to be in the same room and feel very seen by everybody around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because otherwise you're just wandering into the other room and telling the cat or whoever
Yeah.
what's going on, and they don't care.
Yeah, your husband may or may not kind of sort of get it.
Yeah.
Your cat definitely does not care, but your cat is a cat, so of course they don't care. But I think it was also really special for me. I can't speak for Karen, who has been a Harlequin author for many years, but Afterglow is my first trad pub experience, and just getting to hang with some of the other Afterglow authors was wonderful because we're all kind of in this little new boat together, and we're all kind of going, wow, this boat smells really new. It's got new boat smell.
Right.
And so and a lot of the other authors, maybe hopefully I'm not telling tales out of school or imagining things, but they were kind of like looking at us like, okay, you're a new animal.
Right. What are you?
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah. Oh, what is the deal with Afterglow anyway? And so
Yeah, we were like ombudsmen for the imprint.
okay, so I guess it wasn't just me.
No,
I felt that way too.
Yeah, and it must have been really interesting for you, Karen, because you were previously with Dare and Desire. Sorry, I've been going back in some of my old stuff. I recently did my annual fall reread of Tiffany Reese's Men at Work series, which is an old Blaze trilogy.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, my brain is in all of the old lines. So sorry, Desire, yeah, but so you were kind of more in the more traditional club, as it were.
Right. Well, right. I mean, I remember going to my first RWA after I signed with Desire, and it's just, all these authors you've heard of and seen their names on book covers, and all of a sudden you're into this club, but it already exists. Everybody else knows each other. I mean, everyone was lovely to me from the beginning, but it is kind of cool that we're, I don't want to say we're pioneers, But we're, this is a new thing for Harlequin. And so it is really cool to be there from the beginning and to get to spend time together at the beginning when things are still in flux and changing and growing and blossoming.
Yeah. And when Karen says things are changing, I mean, I can literally point to some examples here. So like this is the spine treatment for Fake Flame, because they were going for the American market, at least they were going for sort of the more traditional Harlequin plain spine treatment that they did for all of their category lines. And this is the spine treatment for the antisocial season. And
Yes,
you can
they all
see,
kind of, I have those.
yeah, you can see how much bolder and more
Yep.
branded it is. So, and that I found out was actually, those were both choices that were made because they started out to make it more as sort of like a traditional Harlequin line, and then they found that those, that spine basically disappears
Mhm.
on a shelf.
Yep.
If your book isn't face out, it's kind of disappearing. And so they rapidly made that change from, April to October at least, and well earlier than that, because they've had some others that have had more bold spine treatments. And what was also really interesting is when I got my British and Australian editions of Fake Flame, I did a little TikTok video showing all the different covers and like some of the differences. And the spine treatment was what the really biggest thing that leapt out at me, because they were already doing that in foreign markets, which is, I don't know. I geek out about this stuff. I find it super
Yeah.
interesting.
No, it is interesting. It's super interesting.
I think so. So you all write romantic comedy, which we really enjoy, with your own little twist. Somebody's got Grumpy Sunshine, Enemies to Lovers. We've got a little action and adventure going on. Let's talk a little bit about like what is romantic comedy for each of you. Like how would you define that genre, subgenre?
For me, the big thing is that there has to be some levity to the story. It doesn't mean that there can't be emotional moments, can't mean that you can't have a moment that makes a reader want to cry or actually cry. But and you can have darker themes too, but there needs to be that relief, comic relief, I guess. Whether it's banter or some absurd situation that you put your characters in, that moment that kind of brings you back up. And because I think to me, that moment of laughing or feeling that happiness, levity is like falling in love. And so to me, it adds a whole dimension to the romance that makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah, I would the levity, the lightness, and things like that. That's where I gravitate in by definition as well. Same thing. Like there can be real life brings sadness and tragedy and grief and things like that. Those are definitely things that happen, but those aren't the focus of the story. Like you're supposed to be laughing at it in whatever shape that takes. Like I was watching, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dawn French. She's an actress who has just recently released an autobiography. And she said that the way that she wrote it, she realized that the stories that are really interesting to tell each other, we don't walk up to a friend and we don't say, here's how I did everything really well and how I made all the right choices and my life is amazing. The stories we love to tell each other are, oh my gosh, you are not going to believe the ridiculous thing that I did today, or those kinds of things. Those are where I think romantic comedy lies. That they're weird problems and self-inflicted wounds, and we laugh at ourselves about them, and then they become the story that we tell other people. And that's kind of where these novels fall for me.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I once, somebody once said to me, and it's obviously stuck with me for like 30 years, is that if your wedding goes off without a hitch and goes perfectly, you will have no stories.
Right.
And it's true. I mean, it's so true. And it's also, I mean, obviously the thing about humor is it's so specific and it's so personal. So for me personally, I love banter. I mean, I just mentioned rereading Tiffany Reese's Men at Work trilogy, and it is chock full of just delightful banter. And I think banter also shows you where characters who might be outwardly very different meet mentally, because they get each other's senses of humor. Where humor falls down for me personally is slapstick. Because especially if it feels like the author is humiliating this fictional person.
Right.
Like I'll bring up an example just in media recently, that the recent Much Ado modern remake with Sydney Sweeney and what's his name, who's so
Glenn Powell.
Glenn Powell. Yeah, I got about halfway through it and I was like, I have secondary embarrassment for these characters just far too often, because it felt like the script was just humiliating the characters at every turn, and I didn't find it funny. Again, this is just personal to me, but
Yeah.
I felt like I was just cringing the whole time. And
Yeah, like I think you can drop in like one of those things. Like, sure, we've all like misstepped off a curb or something like
yeah,
that into a stranger's arms, or whatever.
but
But
when it's a drum you keep beating,
yeah,
no, thank you. For me,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Right.
Humor at someone else's expense is
Yeah.
not necessarily what we want to read.
Yeah, I mean, it's like also Mel Brooks once said, he said, if I fall down and hurt, and hurt my knee, it's a tragedy. If someone else falls down and hurts their knee, it's comedy. So obviously, I mean, he's a master, and the differing minds will think differently about such things. But that for me just is, you can see a conversation about a romantic comedy online or wherever, and you will see it really hits with some people and it really just doesn't hit with other people.
mhm.
And that's just the way it's going to happen. And the only time I get upset about that is when somebody says that just wasn't funny. It's like humor is personal.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was probably funny to somebody. Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, so
But that's the tricky thing about writing romantic comedy, right? Because you know already going in that humor is subjective for a lot of people, and so you're trying to make make people laugh, giggle, enjoy themselves, and if their sense of humor does not match up with yours, it might might
Right.
just might just not land the way that you intended, and that's fine.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, not, it's really, I mean, obviously not every writer is for every reader, but it really seems to come out in romantic comedy or comedy in general, just because some people are just going to be like, no, that hits me the wrong way.
Yeah. Some people can't take snark, and they
Mhm.
Yeah.
also a lot of times don't like, I'll just say it, they don't like snark in a heroine,
Heroin, yep.
Mhm.
or a female main character, because that makes them unlikable. But I like a little snark, and we
Yeah.
all have snark. I'm sorry if someone
Yeah.
says that they don't like snark, then I don't trust them.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I agree. I don't know. I love a little snark in my main character.
Yeah, you want something that's a little biting, because
Yeah.
you want to know that there's like a little fire there, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny too, because like, Karen mentioned that her book is Grumpy Sunshine, and this book is also Grumpy Sunshine. It's not, I don't tend to lead with it for some reason, although it's definitely in there. Partly because like one of my readers mentioned that this is, for her it was a different kind of Grumpy Sunshine, because Thea is not just sunshiny, she's a goofball.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to make people laugh. That's her, like she's a clown. And I don't think that Karen's character is necessarily just
No.
sunshine for no reason either. But
Yeah.
I didn't write that thinking, oh, I'm going to write a heroine who is a slightly different kind of sunshine than the usual Grumpy Sunshine. But when she said that, I was like, oh, Yeah, interesting.
When you do sit down to write, do you go into it, is this like, it's going to be a romantic comedy? Do you know, like, there's so many romance tropes, so you're like, this is what I'm trying to hit, or do you let it naturally evolve?
I don't know how to not write jokey banter into a novel. Like if someone told me I had to write some sort of dark gothic dystopian something, I would cry because it's it's just not what I do. It always seems to come out of there.
Do you find in your day-to-day life that you tend to gravitate towards that as well, or do you naturally want to make people laugh and cheer them
Yes,
with
she
humor?
does. She does. I will just volunteer that she does. We had a good funny story happen in Toronto. We were in an Uber and we were stuck at this red light that would not change. The red light would not change. We sat in the car for like 10 minutes and we couldn't figure out, the driver couldn't figure it out. So he gets out and MC 2 seconds later. So this is our car now, right?
I think we've also sufficiently demonstrated that I'm the type of person who just, is going to try to make people laugh just about in
Right.
any reasonable instance. I'm not going to do it at a funeral.
Right.
Yeah.
Aren't you though?
We might need to laugh at a
I
funeral.
mean,
Depends on the funeral.
that's true.
There we
That's
go.
true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm someone too who's always looking for the joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it's a defense mechanism. Um,
Yeah.
So, but it does help you write books. So, call it what you will. It works.
Yeah.
On the trope issue, I usually start with a couple, but they just sort of naturally, I always start with the characters. So for me, it's more about starting with that pairing of where are they alike, where are they different kind of thing. That's usually the starting point for me with tropes. And then I kind of layer them in. They do like us to put a lot of tropes in our books if we can.
Yeah.
So the publisher, they're asking for that as well. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and also, I mean, we write, proposal synopses for these books. As I've said to people, I used to write when I was writing, trying to get a deal when you're first writing fiction, you're trying to get a deal, you write entire books basically on spec. And when I was doing that, I was, as we say, pantsing it pretty much for the most part, writing by the seat of my pants and just watching, doing the discovery thing. And interestingly enough, Harlequin will not buy a book based on vibes. And so I learned to pre-write a synopsis, and it really made me mad when I realized that it actually helps you write the book. Because I really hate writing synopses.
Not fun. It's not
There's-
fun.
There's
Hard.
there's an old saying, which is comparison is the thief of joy. And I have said, well, this is very true. A synopsis is joy's mugger. But yeah, I mean, so I've learned to write these synopses, and I've learned to sort of parse out where the tropes are. And I literally set out to write whatever, Only One Bed, the third book, uh, as something that was going to be packed with tropes, because I wanted to write a Big Brother's best friend book, but I didn't want it to be one of those Big Brother is protective and, doesn't want his little sister dating because, his friend is a dog. Well, if his friend is such a dog, then why are you friends with him? That
Right.
kind of thing, and we've gotten away from that a lot in more recent years, but there's still the echoes of that in the things. But I mean, when I wrote, or when I proposed Fake Flame, I had initially come across this story years ago of this young man in England who his girlfriend had broken up with him, and he had vowed to play the piano on the town green till she took him back. And my initial thought was, I'd want to set his piano on fire, because we all know that this is not the first thing that this guy has done to try to like reconcile with the young woman, and she's probably pretty clearly said, nope, it's not happening. And so this is just a coercive public thing. And so that vignette stayed in my head until I got the idea of, well, okay, so what if the meet cute was with the fireman who's called to the scene? And
I was going to ask you about the firemen. I understand why you write librarians now, but
yes,
will we see? So Fake Flame had a fireman.
yeah.
Your new book, Antisocial Season, has firemen. Are we going to see more firemen? And what what is it about firemen
Well, so
and
no, I mean,
firewomen?
so Thea is a former firefighter, and you know, has started to develop an anxiety issue and has had to leave the force. And so she's the social media manager for the emergency services department. The third book as a paramedic. And that's why the series is called the First Responder series. And no, there will not be a cop.
Okay,
So yeah.
great. Well, I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
I had questions too. In Romancing Stone, I loved the adventure. Did
Mhm.
you get to travel? Did you travel to research any of the adventure and
I
action in the
That is a fantastic question, and I am hoping that the royalties for it pay for me to go to Belize to actually see how well all of my research matched up with what ended up in the book. But my husband actually, when we first graduated from college several years ago, he stayed with his dad's childhood friend who was a scuba instructor, and the this guy did not charge my husband any rent to crash in his basement for a little while. He said that the only requirement was that my husband get scuba certified because it was um, the host's hobby, and he wanted someone to like go scuba diving with him. But he would take annual trips to Belize and talked about how wonderful it was and how beautiful it was. And so I, again, during the days where nobody was traveling much of anywhere, I was like, well, let's just go ahead and satisfy my curiosity about what it looked like. And it's beautiful, and a 4-hour flight from LA, and just really accessible. And um, spoiler, I think it'll be an up and coming tourist destination because there's a lot of development happening there and things like that. But it was an opportunity for me to do the research to find all the places that I might want to travel there. And hopefully that came through. But
yes.
it was a lot of fun to go there in my mind.
Well, I hope that you very soon get to travel there yourself. I'd like to
I'm
go
just
now.
putting the royalty thing out there, manifesting it.
Maybe not on a motorcycle, and I'd like
No,
my Jeep
no,
to not have
no,
any
this would be like
flat
a highly,
tires and
yeah, this would be a highly curated, let me go to Francis Ford Coppola's like resort kind of thing. This would not be.
perfect. Um, Karen, you did quite a swap from the book that you just wrote to the one that you have coming out in the spring in May. Yep. Um, you went like small town. She left the city. She's gonna go to small town, work at a little shop, and very sweet. I live in a small town, so I was like, okay, is this what it feels like for people to come from the city into small town? But your next book is Formula One. Like
Yeah.
that was a jump.
It was a jump. It was definitely a jump. So my editor at Harlequin, Patience Bloom, left in December. And so Stacy, who's you know, our overlord for Afterglow. I'm not sure she would love that. So Stacy became my editor, and she and I had a Zoom call. We'd met many times in person, but to catch up and chat and everything. And so I asked her, what are you looking for? Because I'd already written Swap and Smell the Roses. I was already halfway through the companion book to that. And so she kind of started with her little wish list. And the first couple things, nothing was really resonating. And then she said, well, what I really want is a Formula One romance. And I just basically like exploded on our call. Because my daughter and my husband and I, during COVID, like lots of people, started watching Drive to Survive. And believe me, when my husband was like, I started watching this thing about Formula One, I was like, NASCAR, what? And I didn't understand it at all. Now I'm obsessed. I play fantasy Formula One. I know all about the drivers.
Okay.
It's kind of like the mesh of sports and reality TV in some ways, because there's only 20 drivers in the whole world. And so you can know every single driver and know their backstory, know where they're from, know who their girlfriend is or boyfriend or whatever, know who their pet is. And, so there's all these little storylines that are playing out every week during the races. So, so that was sort of what fueled it. I am pretty well obsessed. Although I did work really hard to make it accessible. This is not like full on jet setting. Mia, the female main character, is a podcaster. She lives in Austin, Texas. And she basically, her podcast about Formula One goes viral when she makes a dick joke about Xander Bishop, the British driver who is her favorite driver. And so she gets invited by his teammate, who is also his chief rival, to the Miami Grand Prix. And so she goes to the race and she meets Xander Bishop. And he's British, but he lives in the countryside and has very humble beginnings. And so as much as it might, there are a lot of like race scenes and excitement and everything, but there's also a lot of really sweet, lovely, pastoral moments in it.
I love that. That's something I
Here is
wanted
my
to touch.
arc.
Yeah, I know. We're all like, do you need someone to read it? But I want to touch base on that too. You all do, like, we talked a lot about the humor, which is an important part of the story, but you all have done such a great job of balancing that, like, romantic comedy with emotional moments and some spicy moments and some, can you talk to us a little bit about how do you find that, like, sweet spot of balance in your story to get enough emotion and enough spice and enough comedy and
My secret weapon is John Jacobson, who is my editor.
okay.
Because John has worked with me for several years now, and they actually freelance edited two of my two last self-published titles. And one of the things that's wonderful about working with John is that I can be a very repressed Scandinavian type person. And they are really wonderful at helping me to draw out emotional moments in the everyday. I get my development edits back from John, and I read if it's a sex scene, pretty much I get keyboard smash. Oh my God, that was amazing. Because I have no problem being emotional with the physical element involved, but John is really good at saying, well, how did this make him feel? Or how did this make her feel? Like this little everyday interchange that they have together. And I have finally gotten a little past my initial, like so many romance authors. It's hilarious how many romance authors are like, oh, feelings, just no. Like, why? Yeah, so for me, the secret sauce really is John, because they are so good at drawing out those little moments that really matter. And if you look back in your own life, you know that those little day-to-day moments, that little, like those little moments where, for instance, like your significant other, that you're having a new relationship and they help you on with your coat, and if you have longer hair, like Mary, I used to have longer hair, and they like pull your hair out of your collar. It's like tiny little moments that just make you go, ooh.
Yes.
Yeah.
And John's expert at picking those out and making sure that the emotion is up in those moments.
Do you wonder, it's interesting that you say that, Adele, because of the like the you feelings thing, because I I do this thing where I will try and intellectualize a feeling. Like,
Mhm.
I'm angry. Well, why am I angry? I don't understand why I'm angry. What could have caused that? And so I sort of think that maybe I gravitated toward romance because I'm like, we're really going to inspect these emotions that people are feeling.
Yeah. Let's put this all under a microscope
Right.
and look.
Yeah.
Like, I can't just feel it. No, that's crazy pants. I have to interrogate it and understand what the cause was. But I think that's the balance, right? And so +1 to John for sure. But if you have nothing but joke after joke after joke, you have an episode of like 30 Rock, which I enjoy.
Right.
But if there isn't any heart to counterbalance it, or any sort of like explanation as to, what they're feeling and why handling someone's hair for them was emotional, or why someone paying attention to you to remember how you made your coffee is just a really lovely thing, that those are the kinds of things that I think really light people up inside when they see other characters, or see characters going through them.
Yeah, and also, I mean, just getting through my own personal Scandi brain to get to the emotion. I think that's, for instance, why Schitt's Creek works so well. Because it's got so much heart underneath all of this rampant cynicism on the surface. And once you start peeling back those layers and seeing that every single one of these characters is exceedingly three-dimensional as an entire inner life, it's a delight. And yeah.
Right. I mean, I'd echo all of that. I'd say editors are definitely hugely important with that. I feel like I've gotten a little better with the balance only after writing 45 books. And that's actually nothing in the world of Harlequin. But
It's not nothing.
That's amazing.
so you train yourself a little bit, but
Yeah.
For me, I write what I want to read, and I like the roller coaster. I like the ups and the downs and the small moments and the big moments. There has to be that mix there. It makes it dynamic, it makes it interesting, exciting, all of those things. So yeah, so you can't just have humor in there, and you can't just have romance in there. There needs to be some like serious, everyone comes into that situation with flaws and wounds and
Problematic family.
yeah, things that they can't get past.
I write a lot of problematic family.
Right. Yeah, I know.
I mean, we need humor to survive that also.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of what makes it so comforting for romance readers. It's like you see yourself on the page, and then you don't feel so alone. You're like, oh, someone else has gone through this too.
Yeah.
I will just say, so I didn't start therapy until much later in life. This was maybe 4 years ago. And about a year and a half into it, my therapist said to me, I am 100% sure that you became a writer because you needed therapy.
it is your therapy.
Yeah. And then basically she was like, I think you were processing all these different things kind of over and over and over again in different ways,
Oh,
kind of
wow.
from every angle. And it is true, but I do think it's a catharsis when you're a writer. I mean, it's not always a catharsis. Sometimes it just feels like rage, but but it can be a really great catharsis, and it is a good outlet for kind of, processing or putting into words things that happen in your life that were disappointing or wonderful, or things that, you felt should have been celebrated that weren't, etc.
Or things that you think should have been avenged but weren't,
Mhm.
Yeah.
speaking like the problematic family members. I mean, you can kind of put them on the page in obviously heavily fictionalized form, or put some of their qualities on the page and
Yeah.
say exactly what you wished you could always say to that person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Not me.
Or
I haven't.
analyze yourself, like MC said. Do you read manuals? Lots of
Yeah, well,
like
I
some
think
of your characters, because yeah.
for sure. But I mean, I think part of the one of my life philosophies is like really the only reason to go through something terrible is to like help other people through it when they have to go through it, because there are things that happen in life that are just unavoidable, and sometimes you can do that through your own personal interactions and things like that. But how many of us have read a novel where someone went through something not great and it became a little bit of a role model for how we might also approach that same problem, right? And so if you don't have that sort of emotional root and core to balance out the humor, then people won't also have that example to learn from. I don't know. I've also been around a lot of people who are like super cynical or wildly optimistic, and neither is especially pleasant to be around for an extended period of time. So you need to have really real people rooted in real life, for anyone to really resonate with the characters that you create.
Yes.
Well, I think sometimes I'm also reacting not just to real life, but to people who write books. And like one of my favorite authors, not going to name names, but one of my least favorite things about them is that they redeem people I think would in real life would be pretty unredeemable. Um, and I've got somebody in antisocial she's got narcissistic personality disorder, and a family structure around her that enables and supports it because she's just too difficult to deal with if they don't do that. And for anybody who's lived through that, um, it's probably not redeemable.
Right.
Because that person is going to really have to have an enormous reckoning, and that probably isn't going to happen given that disorder.
Mhm.
I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but I have several people in my family who have that. And I am like, I'm going to write this character, and she's not going to change,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because that does not happen in my experience.
Yeah.
If it has happened in other people's experience, I am so happy for you, honestly, because it is dreadful. And that it would be fantastic, but in my experience, it has not happened. So
Writing is therapy. I want to make sure that we get to some of the Q&As as well. Maggie has asked, how is writing for Afterglow different from writing for other publishers or category lines?
that's all Karen.
All me. So I wrote for Desire. I wrote, I don't remember, 29 books for Desire. And it's a tiny box, in those stories, the male main character had to be wealthy, powerful. The female main character had to be his equal match, though usually not on the financial side of things or the power side of things. It was usually by sheer grit and determination. It was all the books were set in the US for the most part. And there was a lot of like over the top kind of dramatic situations, melodrama sort of thing, soap opera-ish stuff for a long time. There were a lot of pregnancies and babies, where I would pitch a book and they would be like, this sounds great, can you add a baby or a surprise pregnancy? Which babies ruin most romances, but because of course you have to keep track of the baby. Where is the baby? Is the baby sleeping? Anyway, so
Babies in glasses.
right, yes.
I wrote a hero once with glasses. I will never do that again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, are the glasses on or the glasses off? Are they on the table,
Right.
or are they on his face? Where are the glasses? What's going
Right,
on?
exactly. I'm writing a book with a dog in it. It's the same thing. Where's the dog? So it was just a small box. Now, one thing that was fun about that was that it really challenged you. You had these narrow parameters, but you had to write a totally different story than the last one you wrote. And so it was just challenging in a different way. With Afterglow, it's so wide open. I mean, editorial is very heavily involved in what we're crafting, and they have a, good idea of what they want, but the characters are just it's a much broader, it's a slice of life rather than a narrow, the 1%. So for me, it's much more gratifying and enjoyable, fun, because you can only write so many books that are in that tiny box before you start to lose it a little bit.
I can imagine. We have an anonymous question, and it goes back to what our conversation at the beginning when we talked about comedy being subjective, and they asked, isn't what's romantic also subjective? So, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some women or men or whoever, some people love flowers, some people hate flowers, candy, whatever. You can talk about all the romantic trappings, things that one person might say somebody might find creepy when someone else might find it romantic. So
I mean, that's basically the foundation of fake flame, is that, the guy is the heroine's ex is, deciding to do a grand gesture, and she is a professor of English and pop culture. And so, he thinks he's tapping into what she wants because grand gestures are such a part of the genre. And in the book, the hero and the heroine have a conversation about, like, what's the deal with grand gestures? And she says they can be great as long as they're specific. If for instance, a character has, always wanted to be able to ride, but a horse, but they've never been able to do that, finances, or they've been ill, or do whatever, right? And the other character gives them a horse and teaches them to ride. That is specific, is grounded in what they want. And all too often, grand gestures for me boil down to, I'm making a big show. And I'm sorry, if you make a big show in front of me, like my husband would never, we're both librarians, and he's even more of a librarian stereotype than I am. But if anybody were to do a Jumbotron wedding proposal, I would be already out in the corridor, I'd just be gone. And so many people think these are so wonderful and romantic because they're big. So yeah, it's absolutely subjective.
I think one of the consistent things, though, in everything that you just said, is that the thing that's romantic is when those two characters know that about each other, and they interact in the way that they know that the other one would appreciate, right? So
Yeah.
whatever that might be is consistent. Like that's consistently the thing. It's the same with the humor and the banter, right? Like if you get someone's sense of humor, if you understand that romance to them is setting the coffee every night so that it's there and waiting for your partner in the morning, like that might be it for some people, and some people will be like, ugh, I hate coffee.
Boring.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love the everyday stuff. I mean, my tagline on my logo is real people, only better.
Yeah.
And that was why I actually never thought I'd have a home at Harlequin, because I don't write true small town, and I write high heat. And so, the lines that existed prior to this were like either going to be like you need to bump it up and have people be mega movie stars on yachts and things like that, or it needs to be super, super small town and hand holding and mild heat and that kind of thing. And I write firefighters and college professors and librarians. you know and I like to say that my characters could be somebody you're living next door to, and they're just having like the best few months of their entire life.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like the day-to-day. Someone wants to know, what would be your dream book to write? Any specific character types, locations, or tropes that you're like, is percolating back there, and you're like, someday this is my novel I'm going to get to. That if you're willing to share.
Yeah, it's a little tricky, right? Because if it's something that you know you really want to write, you don't want to put it out in the universe so that someone else
Right.
can snatch the idea.
Right, you can say, and it's absolutely okay to say, I do have something, a dream one I'm going to write, and you'll have to read it soon.
I have absolutely a dream book that I want to write, and I will just say that it's set in Oslo.
Okay.
Because I was luckily able to go. My grandmother was born and started her life in Norway, and came over to this country when she was 12, and I got to go over there several years ago, and find the house where she was born in, and just had just an absolutely magical vacation there. And my husband and I are going to Oslo this year for Christmas. And while it will be very cold and very dark, it will. I'm reasonably confident that it will also be incredibly beautiful.
That sounds.
So, yeah.
I don't really have a dream book because my very first book was my dream book, and then I just kept going. So, I'm also not a person who has there's some authors who might have 20 ideas for books. I usually have 2 or 3 at the most at any one time because I'm too focused on what's right in front of my face. So I'll just say my current book is my dream book, which is my second Formula One romance.
Nice. Oh, good. So we'll get more Formula One.
Yes.
You have scenes that you find the hardest to write? David has asked, what types of scenes do you find that are the hardest to write?
Sex scenes. When I was younger, they used to be super easy. Now I have to think about it a lot more. So, I don't know. I also find there are certain definitely the scenes early in the book when they're first meeting each other, and there's all those little things that they start to notice about each other and that initial attraction. To me, I have to take 7 or 8 passes at those scenes, really layer every little thing in there. So those are just, can be a little bit more painstaking, a little bit more difficult. But that's, that's me. I can't just gush it out. I have to, layer it.
Conflict for me, negative emotion. I only rarely written true bleak moments where the couple really splits up and you wonder if they're getting back together, because I find that really hard. But I feel like there have been too many books in the last 20 years or so where you could tell that the author thought they needed one, and you don't need one necessarily. Fake Flame needed one. Antisocial Season didn't need one. And so, like Karen said, when, the conflict and the argument that led up to the bleak moment in Fake Flame, that took so many iterations of delving into it. Because I mean, those negative emotions, especially if what one person is doing is basically saying, I need to let you go because of really, really good reasons, and I don't want to do it. That's even harder than, you've betrayed me. I no longer trust you. Goodbye.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that was really, really, really hard. But
Yeah, for me, conflict for sure is a hard one, but I think the more humbling ones are when you go back over, you're like, okay, I got the draft done. That was just the basics. And then you go back and you're like, holy info dump, having to take backstory chunks and then figure out how you parcel it out in more bite-sized chunks, so that you're not overwhelming the reader with a wall of text. I know how to do it. I'm just always so disappointed with myself where I'm like, once again, we have dug this hole. Good for you.
Corner, I meet you again. All the paint is in front of me. Okay, fabulous.
Someone would like to know, what are the books or Harlequin authors that you read or read who started you writing?
Karen.
For me, the writer who started me or wanting to write is Judy Blume. She's like, for me, the most formative author. Just as a teenager, I just remember being so obsessed with her books and just reread them a million times and into my 20s and I still enjoy those books. I just reread Wifey like 2 years ago or maybe a year and a half ago. So Judy Blume to me, and she's just been such a warrior on the book banning front because her books have been so universally banned. So for me, that she's the author who really inspired me the most.
Generally speaking, I mean, I think all of us are probably pretty well-read folks. But as far as Harlequin authors, I remember stumbling on a Maisie Yates book about 10 years ago. And I was like, oh, I get this humor. This is fun.
Right.
And, so definitely read a lot of those. But then this is going to sound really obnoxious, but when I read Bridget Jones's Diary, like I really enjoyed it. But at the same time, I was obnoxious and audacious enough to be like, I bet I could do this. And that's what sort of like pivoted me from consuming romantic content and wanting to produce it myself.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of Harlequin, I was not necessarily as aware of branding as I am now. So I do know that Karen was one of the first people I was aware of as a Harlequin author and really liked her books. But in terms of just steadily reading romance, I was absolutely a Georgette Hare person. I read and reread those books so many times. And what's really funny is that you will never catch me writing a historical. I am a reference librarian in my day job. I do not want a busman's holiday to do that much research.
No.
So yeah.
Do you find that working with Afterglow allows more leeway in terms of socioeconomic status, character, age, etc.? That was another question from Maggie.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I haven't had anything in that realm shot down or dismissed or, had an editor want to change anything that I wanted to write. And it's been very diverse from the outset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I Fake Flame has a 41-year-old heroine, and that's crucial to the plot and crucial to the bleak moment. And I mean, Karen has also written Gen X. Well, now that's pretty much millennial, but Karen and I have both written Gen X characters and know that it is a very hard sell in the trad pub market. And so this was as close as I think I could have gotten in trad pub, but I went for it from the get-go. I said I want to write a heroine in her 40s, and John said, "Okay." Wow.
I love that. I love the variety, but I also think, what we were saying earlier about romance novels trying to serve as a little bit of a blueprint for how people navigate life. I think that happens with these jobs and things like that, right? Like most of the people I know who have fallen in love were also working at the same time. And so if you're only reading romance novels where everyone has nothing but leisure time, well, of course, right? But if there are those constraints, I think that's where interesting stuff lies.
Yeah. I mean, my next book is going to has a heroine she comes from a wealthier family, and she is, wealthier in and of herself, but she's definitely not in the Desire Presents stratosphere of,
Yeah.
wealth. She's somebody who has a lot of familial privilege, a lot of familial wealth, but she also works for her family's company. So she's actually a kind of more of a desire heroine, honestly. She's more of a desire hero, I should say. Um, but yeah, we seem to have lost Megan.
Yeah.
We
We
did
did.
lose Megan. Hi guys, it's Billy again, and there's one last question in the Q&A, and this is specifically for Karen.
Okay.
And that's, can you tell us about signing with Desire and how did that happen?
Well, that was bizarre. So the very first book I wrote is a book called Bring Me Back, and it is about a woman who is a music journalist, and she meets and falls in love with the British rock star crush of her youth, only it's 20 years later. And so she's a single mom, and he's kind of well beyond his heyday, and it's still the book of my heart. That was my dream book. But Patience, who was my editor at Harlequin, was given that book by a friend of a friend, and she just wrote me an email and said she really loved it and did I want to write for Harlequin. Now it wasn't as simple as that because we had to figure out where I was going to write for Harlequin. She thought I would do well with Desire. I agreed, but it took months of her, because I had to write a proposal. I had to write the first 3 chapters of a book, and I had to write a full synopsis. And this was not, like Adele said earlier, not what I was used to doing. And I'll just tell you, the first proposal I submitted to her, it was so good. It was so the tension between these 2 characters was so amazing. And Patience was like, I love it so much. The tension, it's so great. But you have to change the whole thing because the hero cannot be an artist. That was the hero was an artist. In Afterglow, the hero could be an artist. But anyway, I had to change the whole entire story because, of course, the whole book hinged on him being an artist. And anyway, so it took another going back to the drawing board and wrapping my brain around it or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, that was 2014. My first Desire book came out in 2015. So that's how that happened. Totally a mix of hard work and luck, which I think is pretty applicable to most writers. You need a little bit of luck, but ultimately it's just a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. We lost power for a minute.
Oh,
Fabulous.
Right? That was surprising.
Fun.
I wonder because everything went kind of dark, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, it's very moody over there." All of a sudden,
It went dark back here for a minute.
spooky season.
You never know. Comedy in real life. I don't have any more questions. We've gone through the Q&As that we had from, if any one else had any other questions, or do you guys have questions for each other?
I think we asked all of those over cocktails in Toronto.
Probably.
We all have new life goals now to be a fly on the wall at the next anniversary, Harlequin anniversary.
I highly recommend. Yeah, and just for what it's worth, the whole thing was just very the setup was very lovely, like where we were staying and accessibility to the offices and all of the wraparound events and things like that. It was a nice I think fill the well kind of weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely felt that way. I got home and I was like, oh, I can write again. Because yeah, I mean, like Adele said, writing is such a solitary pursuit. It's nice to be around other people who do that same thing every day.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm going to be doing next month. I'm going to be doing a signing at Turn the Page in Boonesboro, which is for people who are going, Boonesboro, that sounds familiar. That's Nora Roberts's town. As Kate Claiborne likes to say, people say, oh, to Kate, they say, oh, you're a romance author like Nora Roberts. And she says, no, no one's like Nora. Nora,
Everyone's like,
the town.
right.
But it'll be interesting to be at that and sort of like be around other writers who are not Harlequin writers, because you know, being a Harlequin writer is kind of a specific thing. And so I'm looking forward to also doing that.
That's amazing. That's
I
amazing.
know, right?
Yeah.
Bucket
You'll have to
list.
report back. Report back.
Bucket list item. Check.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, thank you, Maggie. Yeah, I know she started in category. I absolutely know that. And yeah. So we'll see. I've met her once before, only briefly, but
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. If any of you are ever in Oregon.
Okay.
well, actually, Megan, we maybe should stay on the line afterwards and talk, because my day job professional conference is going to be in Portland next year. So
Oh, well, definitely. Let's keep chatting. That would be great.
Hi guys, this is Billy from Bookstore Romance Day again. I want to thank all of you for attending. I want to thank all of our lovely authors for joining us, and thank Megan for playing hostess. Don't forget to order the author's books from the Book Nook. The link is in the chat. I will also add that link when the video of this session is posted to our YouTube channel. And keep an eye out. Bookstore Romance Day for 2025 is coming up on August 9th of next year. And there are some other things planned between now and then. So sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media, follow the Book Nook on social media, and sign up for their newsletter. Thank you all again for joining us, and have a lovely, lovely evening.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you, everybody.
everybody.
And thank you, Billy.